When I saw the text message from my entitled brother, my blood ran cold. Kids are in a CAB to your place. Don't be a jerk. Watch them for the weekend. Followed immediately by him turning his phone completely off. He actually thought he could force my hand, dumping his young children on my doorstep so he and his wife could go on a last-minute getaway. But he made one critical, irreversible mistake. I had moved across the country 3 months ago, and the person currently living at my old address was the absolute last person on earth he wanted involved. The moment that taxi pulled into the driveway, a single phone call was placed, not to me, but to the authorities. By the time my brother turned his phone back on, he wasn't receiving a message about babysitting. He was facing consequences that would tear his comfortable life completely apart. My name is Claire, and at 34 years old, I've worked extraordinarily hard to build a peaceful, structured life as a corporate strategist. My job requires clear boundaries, sharp thinking, and absolute accountability, concepts my older brother, Marcus, spent his entire life actively avoiding. Marcus was the golden child, the perpetual slacker whose gross irresponsibility was always swept under the rug by our parents. For years, I was expected to step in, fix his mistakes, and bail him out whenever his poor planning caught up to him. But 2 years ago, I drew a line in the sand. I stopped playing rescuer. Marcus, of course, mistook my clear boundaries for temporary coldness, convinced that deep down, I would always bend if he pushed hard enough. That delusion came crashing down on a chaotic Friday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, finishing up a critical client presentation, when my phone chimed with a text from Marcus. Hey, need you to take the kids for the weekend. Sarah and I got last-minute tickets to Cabo, dropping them off at 4 p.m. I immediately called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted back instantly, holding my boundary firm. No, Marcus. Absolutely not. I have a major work weekend. Do not bring the kids here. I thought that was the end of it. I assumed even Marcus wouldn't be stupid enough to ignore a direct refusal. I was wrong. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again with a text that made my blood freeze instantly. Kids are in a CAB to your place. Don't be a jerk. Watch them for the weekend. Before I could even process the sheer audacity of what I'd just read, I hit the call button. Nothing. The calls went straight to voicemail. The coward had turned his phone completely off, smugly assuming he'd trapped me into babysitting. What Marcus didn't realize in his rush to play his little game of chicken was that his weaponized entitlement was about to blow up in his face. He was so wrapped up in his own selfish world that he had paid zero attention to my life over the past several months. He had completely forgotten or simply ignored the fact that I didn't live in that apartment anymore. 3 months prior, I had packed up my life and relocated across the state for a major career promotion. I had sent a family group text, posted the update, and even mentioned my new city during our brief holiday phone call. But Marcus never truly listened to anyone unless the conversation was about him. In his mind, my old 2-bedroom apartment near downtown was permanently my domain, a convenient safety net he could exploit whenever he felt entitled to a free weekend getaway. He simply assumed I was still sitting on that 3rd-floor couch, waiting to absorb his mess. He couldn't have been more wrong. The person currently living at my former address was Evelyn, a veteran child protection investigator with 20 years of experience dealing with neglect, abandonment, and unstable domestic situations. She was a no-nonsense, sharp-eyed woman who had seen every trick in the book and possessed zero patience for irresponsible parents. On that particular Friday afternoon, Evelyn happened to be working from home, enjoying a rare quiet afternoon, when a loud, insistent knock echoed against her front door. She opened it to find a visibly stressed taxi driver standing in the hallway, flanked by 2 small children, my 8-year-old nephew, Leo, and my 6-year-old niece, Maya. Both kids were clutching small backpacks, looking pale, bewildered, and frightened. The driver held out a digital tablet, explaining that a man had loaded the children into his cab across town, paid a base fare online, and given him this specific address with instructions to drop them at the door. She's expecting them. When the driver arrived, no one answered his initial knock because Evelyn had no idea why a cab was outside. When he knocked again, Evelyn stepped out, completely baffled. The driver pressed for the remainder of the fare and an adult signature, but Evelyn quickly realized the gravity of the situation. The children's father was nowhere to be seen. When the driver tried calling the number on the account, Marcus's phone went straight to voicemail, completely powered down. Marcus had gone dark, believing he had successfully forced my hand, totally oblivious to the fact that his kids were standing in a hallway with a total stranger. Evelyn's professional instincts kicked in immediately. She reassured the bewildered cab driver, paid the remaining balance out of her own pocket, and gently invited Leo and Maya inside her apartment. As a veteran child protection investigator, she recognized the textbook legal definition of child abandonment when she saw it. 2 minors left at her residence without verified adult handover, with the guardian's phone intentionally turned off. While giving the kids juice boxes and turning on cartoons to keep them calm, Evelyn dialed local law enforcement and initiated an urgent child welfare protocol. Within 15 minutes, 2 police officers arrived at the door to document the situation and take official custody of the children for their immediate safety. While officers worked to track down the property owner, the landlord provided my contact information as the previous leaseholder. My phone rang just as I was pacing around my new living room across the state, still fuming over Marcus's arrogant text message. When I answered, I expected an angry call from my brother. Instead, I heard a stern police sergeant asking if I was the aunt of Leo and Maya. My heart dropped. I quickly clarified that I had moved across the state 3 months ago and had zero physical access to the kids. I immediately forwarded the sergeant the time-stamped text exchange from earlier that afternoon, proving beyond any doubt that I had explicitly refused to watch the children and that Marcus had sent them to an outdated address anyway before shutting off his device. The police sergeant's tone turned ice-cold as he reviewed the evidence. What Marcus intended as a petty stunt to force free babysitting had now officially escalated into an active police investigation for reckless endangerment and child abandonment. Emergency Child Protective Services were dispatched to take temporary custody of my niece and nephew while officers issued an urgent alert for Marcus and his wife. As the authorities began searching for the parents who were blissfully flying off to their weekend getaway, I sat in silence, realizing that my brother's lifelong habit of dodging accountability had finally reached its absolute limit. Nearly 24 hours after abandoning his children on a doorstep, Marcus finally touched down at his luxury resort in Cabo, completely oblivious to the chaos he had set in motion. The moment he disabled airplane mode on his phone, expecting a barrage of angry, helpless texts from me, his screen lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of frantic missed calls, emergency alerts, and voicemails flooded his device. Not from me, but from local police detectives, state social workers, and county child welfare officers. Panic instantly replaced his smug composure. Hands shaking, Marcus bypassed the official numbers and dialed me directly, his voice exploding through the speaker in a hysterical rage before I could even say hello. "What the hell did you do, Claire?" he screamed, completely oblivious to his own madness. "Child Services called me. They have my kids. Why didn't you just take them like you were supposed to? You completely ruined our vacation." I sat back in my desk chair, my voice dripping with icy calm as I delivered the dose of reality he so desperately needed. "Marcus, I haven't lived at that apartment in 3 months. I told you no in writing 3 separate times. You put your 8-year-old and 6-year-old in a cab to a house occupied by a stranger, turned your phone off, and flew out of the country. You didn't trick me into babysitting. You abandoned your children at a total stranger's door." The line went dead silent as the horror of what he had actually done finally began to pierce through his thick skull. He tried to stammer out an excuse, claiming it was just a simple sibling misunderstanding, but I cut him off cleanly. "The police have the text messages, Marcus. They know you knowingly sent them after I refused, and they know you shut off your phone to avoid being stopped. You need to get on the first flight back, because the authorities are waiting for you." Marcus and his wife were forced to turn right around and board an emergency flight home, but their ordeal was only beginning. The second their plane touched down back on local soil, they weren't greeted by warm family members or an apologetic sister. They were met at the gate by law enforcement officers who escorted them directly to the station for formal questioning regarding criminal child neglect. The legal fallout for Marcus and his wife was swift, brutal, and entirely self-inflicted. Faced with documented proof of intentional abandonment and the sworn testimony of an off-duty child protection investigator, Marcus couldn't spin his way out of responsibility. The court imposed hefty criminal fines, mandated 6 months of supervised parenting classes, and placed their household under strict state monitoring. His long-standing reputation as a charming, harmless slacker evaporated overnight, replaced by the public record of his shocking irresponsibility. Predictably, the extended family tried to intervene. My parents called me, sobbing and begging me to retract my statement to the police, claiming family should protect family and blaming me for letting things go so far. But I stood completely firm. I calmly reminded them that Marcus's choices were his own, and that shielding him from consequences for 30 years was precisely what led to him putting his own children in danger. When they continued to demand that I take the fall for his ruin, I made the final, liberating choice to go low contact with the entire enabling circle. In the months that followed, Leo and Maya were placed under close state supervision, ensuring they finally received a safe, stable environment. As for me, sitting in my bright, quiet living room in my new city, I felt an unbelievable sense of freedom. By refusing to let my toxic brother manipulate me, I hadn't just protected my own boundaries, I had finally forced him to grow up. What would you have done if your sibling tried a stunt like this? Would you have stood your ground or helped them out? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.